All right, so I want to talk to you a little bit about the promo from Friday between John Cena and Randy Orton and where we're going with Backlash St. Louis. Now, it was pretty obvious prior to even WrestleMania when they announced that Backlash would be in St. Louis. It was obvious to me they were going to do Randy Orton, John Cena at that show. Obviously, I knew that Cena had to win at WrestleMania, and I had done videos explaining to y'all why Cena winning was the only option. But even if he didn't win, if this is going to be Cena's farewell tour, he has to have at least one match with Randy Orton. In fact, I had actually wanted a couple years ago when Cena, or was it last year, when Cena announced he'd have his final year in 2025, I wanted Cena and Randy to have that WrestleMania match because they always wanted to have one at WrestleMania. These guys feuded on and off in WWE for many years. In '07 they had a feud, '08, '09, I think a little bit in 2010. Then again, I think around 2013 they had like that title unification match at TLC. So these guys have been on and off, but I think the most memorable time would be in 2009 because John Cena, Randy Orton headlined, I want to say something like 5 to 6 pay-per-views in a row with different stipulation matches. You had like a submission match, you had a Hell in a Cell, did a Iron Man, like it's all on Peacock, it's all on, or Netflix, depending on how you get your stuff. But like the last half of '09 was Cena and Orton just all over each other. Pause. But I think WWE sees it as a legendary feud. I mean, I guess this sort of is that. I can tell you that in somebody who lived it, I wanted them to move on from Randy Orton and John Cena at the time and not do so many rematches back to back to back. That was something WWE was notorious about doing in the late 2000s, early 2010s. I mean, dude, there were like 8 Sheamus and Big Show matches in 2012. There was a bunch of like Alberto Del Rio against Dolph Ziggler, Kofi Kingston, Dolph Ziggler. Maybe those I don't remember as much, but certainly in the main event. Now, they had to do something different here because this time John Cena's the heel, Randy Orton's the babyface, which was straight up set on the back and forth. So I want to say this about this promo. So on Monday, Randy hit the RKO. Great way to start the feud. This continued it here. And so first of all, when it came to like the delivery of the back and forth, I think they both did great. I think John Cena has shown fire, and we actually got to see more of that fire here than in the first couple weeks of the promos he did with Cody. I thought this promo with Randy energetically was about as good as the promo with Cody. Now, the issue is that they went back to it being John being upset at the fans. However, in this version of the of Cena's promo, there was a twist to it, and that is that Randy Orton tells John Cena, like, maybe you need to have some kids. Like, maybe that's your issue, is that you don't have any children, and you should have children. You know, and that's always been a very interesting point that people have made about John Cena. You know, he's one of the only top guys ever in wrestling, doesn't really have kids, you know. Think about all the other legends in the business. Like, they all have at least one kid, right? Now, not everybody wants to have children. Some people just don't feel they would be good parents or don't want to deal with the responsibility, or, you know, it's just everyone's different. But I think in Cena's case, there have been people who wondered this. And, you know, with his Make-A-Wish stuff, like, he's done so much for so many kids that, like, you know, he kind of has been there for a lot of kids, more than a lot of us would be, even if we had our own kids or even if we didn't. So Randy kind of brings that up. And then John Cena's whole thing was, well, I couldn't have any kids of my own because I was too busy raising yours. And he talks to the crowd, and, essentially hustle, loyalty, and respect. Randy Orton even talks about how that was really him. That wasn't just a slogan. And they really, once again, lean into this whole, like, how Cena treats the fans. And then Cena's whole response to what Randy said was basically saying, like, how dare you try to, play these psychological games and guilt trip me, and sort of was offended at the fact that because Randy Orton has a family, that he thinks it would be good for John. It was a very realistic promo because I know people and have been a part of discussions like this about people that don't want to have kids versus people that do want to have kids. And even some politicians have been quoted as saying, like, well, you're not a real man if you don't have kids. And that's just not fair, I don't think. Like, even if you're a conservative, even if you have a conservative mindset, that doesn't necessarily mean everybody else needs to follow this idea that, well, you need to have kids to feel like a man. I don't agree with that at all because and here's why, because there's a lot of people who should not be parents. I see it every day. There's a lot of people who have kids because sex is good or they make mistakes when they're young and they end up having no idea what they're doing. And they end up creating a chain reaction where the family ends up having a consistent problem behaviorally or psychologically because one parent had a kid at the wrong time and wasn't ready for that responsibility. And there's people who straight up will say, like, I'm not ready for that responsibility and I don't think I'd be good at it. And I have respect for that. I have a lot of respect for that. So maybe Cena's whole thing is like, I don't really think I would have time for kids of my own because I'm traveling all the time and I'm doing movies all the time. And other people can make it work, but maybe he thinks this be too much. Maybe he feels like the responsibility if the kid ends up going down a dark path would reflect poorly on him. I mean, everybody has their own choices to make in life, but it was a very mature conversation, like one that I think the parents in the crowd would probably be more into this, which is funny because the last time these two guys feuded and every other time, Randy Orton was the straight up, like, heel. Like, there was nothing redeeming about that character, whether it be the fact that he would be overly violent on his opponents, or the fact that he would psychologically try to manipulate them, or the fact that he would cheat, or the fact that he would, hurt people. Like, Randy Orton during that 08-09, run, when they first started playing Voices as his entrance music, when he got the sleeve tattoos, like, during that packaging of Randy Orton, he was just a vicious, terrible heel, and he was the opposite of John Cena. Two guys who came up together in OVW. Randy Orton even starts the promo by saying, we shook hands for the first time 25 years ago, which would have been in OVW. And I think that this promo was aimed toward people who maybe didn't have kids when they first had a match or first feuded and now they do and they were with their kids in the crowd, or people who were kids back then and now they're adults and now they're thinking about having kids or they have had kids. I think it sort of fit well as far as a sequel to what they had done in the past, if that makes sense. But once again, they went back to John being mad at the fans. And while the delivery of the promo was great, we still don't, and I'll be honest, I don't think we're going to get an answer as to why John Cena sold his soul. It made sense when he first did it, with the idea being that Rock would be the one to help him win the title at WrestleMania, and then there was no Rock. So what exactly is Cena getting out of that? What is Rock getting out of it? You got the belt off of Cody. Shouldn't Rock be the guy celebrating that since it's his revenge from last year? No, there's problems behind the scenes. I talked about it in my video. I even showed proof. And now there are other podcasters, people who have been in the business, like people like Conan and other shows that have been discussing the possibility of a Rock Triple H like behind the scenes disagreement about the direction of WrestleMania. Brian Alvarez talked about it, said a lot of the same points that I made, that it really seems like there might still be some heat between these guys, and that Rock might say, okay, well, they didn't do my idea last year. I came out of retirement, gave him a big, big boost, which he did, and made the feud better in some ways. Maybe not for Roman, but it was definitely more interesting with the final boss character. And then this follow up to that, again, Rock has a pinfall win over Cody. The follow up to that is not happening, and we're not getting Roman and Rock. I mean, is The Rock? I think there might be a possibility, too, that The Rock might have been given some bad medical news and maybe doesn't want to publicly say he's retired because it might tank the TKO stock. Like, you have to understand, there's a possibility of that being the case. That maybe Rock can't wrestle anymore. Maybe something ended up in some blood work he was doing. I don't know. Like, I'm telling you this because there have been stories like this in the past where strange things happen and people don't reveal to the public what's really going on until many years down the road. I'm not making excuses for The Rock. As of right now, it seems like he very selfishly ditched WWE because he didn't get his way, and it was a mistake. So I don't know if we're ever going to get John's like reason for selling out to The Rock, but his reason for becoming a bad guy is the fans, which has been done a gazillion times before. But at least in the Randy Orton back and forth, they addressed some of the history, but they could have addressed more of it. Randy Orton got the RKO off on John and left him laying. I mean, I don't think Randy Orton's going to beat John Cena at the show. I doubt Travis Scott's going to be involved. So I think Cena's going to win, and it'll be interesting to see how. Who's going to screw over Randy Orton, or who's going to... Is Rock going to... I don't think Rock's going to show up, but you never know. I have doubts about that, and I would not get my hopes up if I were any of you. But overall, it was a good segment. The TLC match was crazy. SmackDown was all right. You know, there's some stuff in the show that definitely is filler content, but for a SmackDown after WrestleMania, not bad. Aleister Black's debut was okay, I guess. I think he stood in the ring a little bit too long, but, you know, staring at Miz, it was a little uncomfortable there. But besides that, it was fine. So, again, I'm not going to become a channel where I review wrestling TV every week, but if there's something interesting that comes along, I'll talk about it. In fact, I might be giving you an idea on how to save the Final Boss storyline. There is a way to do it. There's a few ways to do it, and I've talked about them in the past. Maybe I can think of something for now, like what to do now after they've already botched Mania 41. Stay tuned for that. So, hope you have a great day, man. Take care of yourselves, all right?